They accidentally left me off the guest list. For the party, I paid $13,000 to host. My sister said, "You thought you'd just make it awkward." Then Mom added, "It was better without you." I didn't argue. I just called the caterers, pulled every deposit, and reversed the venue transfer. 30 minutes in, the food vanished, the lights cut, and their phones lit up with panic as I watched from a beachfront balcony. I, 32M, never thought my own family would pull something this cruel, but here we are. My sister was getting married in 3 weeks, and like the supportive older brother I'd always been, I offered to cover the reception costs. $13,000 seemed like a reasonable investment in family happiness. Mom was struggling financially after Dad's passing, and I wanted to take the pressure off everyone. I handled everything: the venue deposit, catering down payment, lighting, even the DJ. My name was on every contract. The wedding was supposed to be intimate. 50 guests at the Riverside Manor, overlooking the lake where we used to fish as kids. I'd coordinated with the venue manager, talked through menu options with the caterer, and even helped pick the playlist. This wasn't just a financial contribution. I was emotionally invested in making her day perfect. 3 days before the wedding, I was reviewing final details with the caterer when something fell off. She mentioned the guest count had been finalized at 49. I asked her to send me the list, thinking maybe a few people had canceled last minute. My stomach dropped when I opened that email. 49 names, carefully organized alphabetically. I scanned through twice, then a third time. My name wasn't there. Not even my +1 for the girlfriend I'd been dating for 2 years was included. I called my sister immediately. She picked up on the 4th ring, and I could hear wedding preparations in the background. I asked her directly about the guest list situation, trying to keep my voice level. There was this long pause before she responded that they decided to keep it really small, just immediate family and closest friends. I reminded her that I was immediate family, her brother who was paying for this entire reception. She got defensive, claiming I was being dramatic and that I'd just make things awkward anyway. According to her, I always overthought social situations and made people uncomfortable with my intensity. That stung, but I pressed further. I asked if this was really about me being awkward or if something else was going on. She admitted that some of her friends thought I was weird, and she didn't want to deal with explaining my presence or having me judge everyone. She said she'd already told people I couldn't make it due to work commitments. I was speechless. This was my sister, the person I'd driven to soccer practice for 3 years, helped with homework, lent money to when she was struggling in college. I asked if Mom knew about this arrangement. She told me Mom was actually the one who suggested leaving me off the list. According to my sister, Mom felt the wedding would flow better without me there, that I'd been distant lately anyway, and that my contribution was appreciated but didn't automatically guarantee an invitation. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I asked to speak with Mom directly. My sister hesitated, then said Mom was busy with last-minute preparations. I told her to put Mom on the phone immediately. Mom's voice was cold when she finally spoke. She confirmed everything my sister had said, adding that they'd discussed this weeks ago and decided it was for the best. She claimed I'd been negative and critical about family gatherings recently, and they wanted this day to be purely positive. I asked her when I'd been negative or critical. She brought up Christmas dinner, where I'd apparently made some comment about my cousin's new boyfriend that made everyone uncomfortable. I barely remembered the interaction. I'd asked the guy about his job, standard small talk. But according to Mom, my tone was judgmental and dismissive. She continued, saying that my presence often created tension because I analyzed everything too much and made people feel like they were being evaluated. She said they loved me, but sometimes love meant making hard decisions for the greater good. I told her this was unbelievable, that they were excluding the person who was paying for their celebration. Mom's response was that my financial contribution was voluntary, and it didn't buy me the right to attend if my presence would negatively impact the day. Then my sister got back on the phone and delivered the final blow. She said I was proving their point by making this about money and creating drama. She told me if I couldn't handle being excluded gracefully, then they'd made the right choice. She actually said it was better without me, and that everyone would have more fun not walking on eggshells around my judgment. I hung up without another word. For about 10 minutes, I sat in my car processing what had just happened. My own family had planned an elaborate celebration funded entirely by my money, deliberately excluded me from attending, and then acted like I was the problem for being upset about it. Then something shifted in my mind. If they wanted to play games, I could play too. I drove straight home and pulled out every contract and receipt related to the wedding. My name was the primary contact on everything. The venue, catering, lighting company, DJ, all of it was in my name with my credit card as the payment method. I started with the caterer. I called their emergency line and explained that there had been a family emergency and we needed to cancel immediately. They were sympathetic, especially when I mentioned it was a death in the family. Since it was within 72 hours, there would be cancellation fees, but they'd refund 60% of the deposit. The venue manager was next. I told her the same story, sudden death in the family, wedding postponed indefinitely. She was incredibly understanding and offered to hold our date for 6 months if we wanted to reschedule. I thanked her, but said we wouldn't be needing the venue after all. The lighting company was easiest. They hadn't delivered anything yet, so it was a simple cancellation with a small processing fee. The DJ was annoyed since it was short notice, but he agreed to cancel and keep half his deposit. Within 2 hours, I'd systematically dismantled every aspect of the reception I'd organized. The total refunds came to about $9,000. Not perfect, but considering they tried to steal my money and exclude me from my own investment, it felt fair. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done. Update 1. Wedding day arrived, and I had a perfect view. I'd booked a room at the Lakeside Resort, directly across from Riverside Manor. My balcony overlooked the entire venue, and I'd brought binoculars and my camera with the telephoto lens. Not to be creepy, just to document the moment when reality hit them. The ceremony itself went off without a hitch. I watched my sister walk down the aisle in the dress I'd helped her pick out, saw Mom crying tears of joy, witnessed all 49 guests celebrating what they thought would be a perfect day. Around 5:30, guests started migrating toward the reception area. I could see them gathering on the patio, probably expecting cocktails and appetizers. The confusion started almost immediately. Through the binoculars, I watched the venue coordinator approach my sister and her new husband. Even from across the lake, I could see the panic spreading across their faces. My sister's body language changed completely. Her shoulders tensed. Her hands started gesturing frantically. Mom joined the conversation, and I watched her pull out her phone, probably trying to call the caterer. Then the venue manager appeared, looking apologetic and professional as she explained the situation. The beautiful thing about having a clear view was seeing the exact moment when each person realized what had happened. First my sister, then Mom, then gradually the entire wedding party as word spread through the crowd. I ordered room service and settled in to watch the chaos unfold. My phone started ringing around 6 o'clock. First my sister, then Mom, then my sister again. I let them go to voicemail. Then text messages started flooding in. Sister, what did you do? The caterer says you canceled everything. Mom, call me immediately. This is not the time for your games. Sister, you're ruining my wedding day. How could you be so selfish? Mom, we can work this out, but you need to fix this right now. I poured myself a glass of wine and kept watching. By 6:30, I could see people starting to leave. The older guests went first, probably confused about the delay and tired of waiting around. Then families with young children began packing up. My sister was on her phone constantly, probably calling every restaurant in town trying to find last-minute catering for 50 people on a Saturday night. Good luck with that. Around 7, the venue coordinator made what looked like an announcement to the remaining guests. I watched people's faces change as they realized there would be no reception. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed annoyed at the wasted evening. The bride was crying now. Not happy tears, the frustrated, angry kind. Mom was pacing back and forth, gesturing at her phone like she could will it to solve their problems. My phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number, probably the groom trying to reach me. I declined the call and ordered another bottle of wine from room service. Update 2. By 8 o'clock, the wedding party had essentially dissolved. Most guests had left, probably to find their own dinner plans. Only immediate family and a few close friends remained, standing around in their formal, were looking completely lost. I watched my sister collapse into a chair, still in her wedding dress, while Mom frantically made phone calls. The groom was trying to console his new wife, while simultaneously dealing with confused relatives asking what was happening. The venue staff began cleaning up the ceremony area, since there was no reception to transition to. I could see them folding chairs and removing decorations while the family stood around in crisis mode. My phone had been buzzing nonstop with increasingly desperate messages. Sister, please, I'm begging you. I'm sorry about the guest list. We made a mistake. Mom, this is your sister's wedding day. Whatever problems we have can be worked out later. Sister, I'll pay you back every penny. Just please call the caterer and fix this. Unknown number, probably groom. I don't know what happened between you and your family, but this is hurting the woman I love. Please help us figure this out. Mom, fine, you want an apology? I'm sorry. We should have included you. Now please stop this childish revenge. I screenshot every message but didn't respond to any of them. Around 8:30, I watched something interesting happen. My sister stood up from her chair, looked directly across the lake toward my resort, and pointed. She said something to Mom, who also turned and stared in my direction. They'd figured out where I was. 10 minutes later, my room phone rang. The front desk informed me that I had visitors in the lobby requesting to speak with me. I told them I wasn't receiving guests and to please inform my visitors that I was unavailable. My cell phone rang immediately after. This time I answered. Sister was sobbing hysterically, barely coherent. She kept apologizing and begging me to fix the situation. She said she understood why I was angry, that she'd made a terrible mistake, and that she'd do anything to make it right. I let her cry for a full minute before I spoke. I told her that I appreciated her apology, but actions had consequences. She'd made it clear that my presence would ruin her perfect day, so I'd ensured she could have her celebration exactly as planned, without me and without my financial contribution. She tried to argue that she'd been stressed and said things she didn't mean. I reminded her that Mom had confirmed the decision, making it clear this wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, but a calculated choice to exclude me while keeping my money. She handed the phone to Mom, who was no longer apologetic. Mom was angry now, demanding that I fix the situation immediately and calling my behavior vindictive and cruel. She said I was destroying my sister's wedding out of spite and that I should be ashamed of myself. I asked Mom if she remembered what she'd told me, that it was better without me, that everyone would have more fun without walking on eggshells around my judgment. I told her she was getting exactly what she'd asked for, a celebration without me. Mom started yelling about family loyalty and how I was being petty. I hung up on her. 20 minutes later, I watched hotel security escort 3 people out of the lobby. Even from my balcony, I could see it was my sister still in her wedding dress, Mom, and presumably the groom. They stood in the parking lot for a few minutes before getting into a car and driving away. Update 3. The next morning, I checked out early and drove home. My phone had 37 missed calls and 62 text messages, but I didn't read them until I was back in my apartment. Most were variations of the same themes: anger, desperation, guilt-tripping, and renewed apologies. But a few were interesting. My cousin had texted asking what really happened, mentioning that the family was telling people I'd had a mental breakdown and sabotaged the wedding. My aunt sent a message saying she'd always thought I was weird, but this was crossing a line into genuine cruelty. There were also messages from people defending me. My sister's college roommate, who'd been at the wedding, texted that she couldn't believe they'd excluded me after I'd paid for everything. She said it was the most awkward situation she'd ever witnessed, and that several guests had asked where I was. The groom's brother reached out, saying he'd heard my side from someone and wanted me to know that not everyone thought I was in the wrong. He mentioned that his family had been confused about my absence and felt uncomfortable when they learned about the circumstances. Most surprisingly, I got a message from my sister's maid of honor. She said she'd tried to convince my sister to include me weeks ago when she learned about the situation. According to her, she'd warned my sister that excluding me would backfire spectacularly, especially since I was funding the reception. Over the next few days, I started getting calls from relatives I hadn't heard from in months. Word was spreading through the family about what had happened, and people were taking sides. Some relatives supported Mom and my sister, claiming that regardless of the circumstances, ruining someone's wedding day was unforgivable. They argued that I should have handled the situation like an adult instead of throwing a tantrum. Others were firmly in my corner. They pointed out that my family had essentially stolen my money while deliberately excluding me, and that my response, while dramatic, was justified given the level of betrayal. The family was fracturing along predictable lines. The relatives who'd always found me too intense or analytical sided with Mom and my sister. Those who'd felt that I was often treated unfairly by the family supported my actions. 2 weeks after the wedding, my sister called from a different number. She was calmer this time, no longer hysterical. She told me that she and her husband had managed to salvage their honeymoon, but the wedding reception situation had created lasting embarrassment and financial strain. She said she understood why I was angry and that she'd been wrong to exclude me. But she also said that my revenge had been disproportionate and cruel, and that it had damaged relationships beyond just ours. I told her that I hadn't intended to ruin her marriage or cause lasting damage. My goal had been simple. If they didn't want me at the celebration, then it wouldn't be my celebration to fund. I'd given them exactly what they'd asked for, an event without my involvement. She asked what it would take for us to repair our relationship. I told her that I needed time to process everything that had happened, and that trust, once broken this severely, couldn't be rebuilt overnight. She said she loved me and hoped we could eventually work things out. I told her I loved her too, but that love didn't mean accepting disrespect or manipulation. Final update. 6 months later, the family dynamics have permanently shifted. Mom and I speak occasionally, but our relationship is strained. She maintains that my actions were excessive, while I maintain that their betrayal was unforgivable. We're polite but distant, like acquaintances rather than family. My sister and I have had several long conversations. She's genuinely remorseful about the guest list situation and has admitted that she was influenced by friends who never liked me and by Mom's tendency to see me as the family problem. She's working to understand why she found it so easy to exclude me while keeping my financial contribution. The groom, surprisingly, has become an unexpected ally. He reached out independently to apologize for his role in the situation and to thank me for teaching them an important lesson about taking family for granted. He said the experience had opened his eyes to some problematic dynamics in our family. Several relatives who initially condemned my actions have since changed their minds after learning more details about how the exclusion was planned and executed. They've come to see my response as justified, even if dramatic. The financial cost was about $4,000 total, the cancellation fees and deposits I couldn't recover. Considering I'd been prepared to spend $13,000 on people who didn't want me there, it felt like money well spent. The emotional cost was higher. Some family relationships are permanently damaged, and holiday gatherings are now awkward affairs where people choose sides or avoid the topic entirely. But I don't regret what I did. They wanted a celebration without me while keeping my money. They got exactly what they asked for, just not the way they'd planned. I learned that family loyalty doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is show people the consequences of their choices. My sister learned that excluding people has costs, that taking financial support for granted is dangerous, and that treating family members as disposable has serious repercussions. Mom learned that enabling toxic behavior and prioritizing appearances over genuine relationships leads to broken families. The wedding that was supposed to bring everyone together instead revealed the fault lines that had always existed in our family dynamics. My response didn't create those problems. It just made them impossible to ignore. Some people call what I did vindictive. I call it educational. Sometimes the best way to teach people about respect is to show them what happens when it's absent. I'm still the family member who analyzes situations and makes people uncomfortable with my intensity. The difference is that now everyone knows there are consequences for trying to manipulate or exclude me while expecting me to smile and pay the bills. The view from that balcony was worth every penny.